Okay, I'm going to introduce you to how to use the administrative portal for editing and adding information about our epic order. I'm going to give you a web address, take you to a page like this, and type in your CCF email login. And you'll see you'll get a page like this. And this is a list of all the orders that we have. Some of them are worthwhile, some of them are not worthwhile. Just to remind you, the reason we're doing this is we want clinicians who are going to be able to search for orders or find orders in this to get useful information that will help them decide on whether or not to use that particular imaging order. Okay, so let me and also remind you that before you had used the Google Forms to bring in information. Some of you did it yourself, some of you distributed it to members of your sections. We have captured that information, though it's imperfect. It's either it can be incomplete in some cases, it can be sloppy, and at the very least, we want you to be able to review the orders that were put in so that we can get good data out to the clinicians. And if you remember before, we did the top 100 orders or so for each section, the top 100 that are most commonly ordered. And so that's our first target, is to get that stuff kind of edited and sharp. And then to go beyond that, to add additional information on more orders, which over time can be filled out over a longer period of time. And remember, there's no particular endpoint. You can always come back and edit orders and refine them. So let me get you some orientation into where we are here. Okay, so this is sort of all the orders, and there are some filter options here. One of the filter options is to select essentially by the section or specialty, kind of the standard things. And so, for instance, for me, for musculoskeletal, if I click that, it will filter it. You can also hit this button, but I didn't have to here. And all these should be musculoskeletal. Most of these came across through certain rules that gets close to the point, but occasionally you might get something wrong. Like you might say, this really isn't a musculoskeletal case. And then you can edit the specialty of that particular order by clicking on this and then selecting the order that you want. Even though this isn't right, in this case, I could change this to cardiac. And now when I filter on cardiac, this will pop up. And when I filter on musculoskeletal, this order won't come up. But since that's wrong, I'm just going to switch it back. Okay. Now, let's look at this other status filter. So all new, draft, and reviewed. Reviewed is the status that we have after you or someone in your section has reviewed the order and feels like it's good enough, at least, to go out into the wild. That clinicians could look at that, get useful information, and not have misinformation, or not to be too confusing. Doesn't mean it's final. We can always go back and redo things. And I'll show you how you make it into reviewed status. Draft are those studies that we already have some information on. This is the stuff that came in through the Google Forms before. And I will show you that. And then new refers to studies that the orders that exist in our system, like, for instance, bone density is a new study because if I look into its details, there will be no useful information there. It's just totally blank, and it's waiting for some information, whereas draft has something already filled in. And I'm going to show you that in just a second. So if we go to, I guess, the draft musculoskeletal orders, that's one way you can do it. And then you can even refine things further by putting in terms like, let's say, RIE. Right now you can't hit enter, you have to hit this, but that's going to have to be fixed soon. And then you can go to view details. So just again, you use this to filter down the list, and then you can look at any particular order. And in this case, notice 3 orders came up, but they're all basically the same type of order. It's just right and left and bilateral, which is maybe unique to musculoskeletal. If I go in here, these are linked. So if I change the information on any one of those 3 orders, it will affect the information for the other orders as well. You can always see what's in those other orders by clicking on this hyperlink, and a little, they call a modal window to just show what's in there comes up. Anyway, let's go through kind of what you typically see of these orders. And actually, before I do that, I'm going to take one step back. When I did this search, I use the word MRI. You'll notice, let me see if this actually works. If I do MRI, nothing comes up. So that will be fixed soon, and maybe by the time you play with it. But the terms that we use right now for searching for our epic orders are MR, CT, NM for nuclear medicine. IR has all the IR orders. XR is X-ray. US is ultrasound. I believe MAM is mammography. So you can use, and you don't have to do the right case, of course. You can use those to search. Eventually, we'll have it so that it does a better job. Right now, if I do knee MRI, the opposite, nothing is coming up. That will be fixed soon. But just, that's how we do it. Okay, so let's look at what is in one of these orders. Basically, so we have this linked thing to in case we don't want to duplicate our work, we want to be able to be efficient with our time. You can, if you happen to find something, let's say, that should be linked to the other side, left and right, which hopefully are all done already, but if they're not, you can go over here and link in order by searching for it. So I go MRE and say, oh, this is the current order. I want to link it to the right order. Well, it's already linked to that, so I'm not going to do this, but you can click the link button, and then anything that you change in this order will also affect these other orders. Protocol is just something that we're trying to get a very basic explanation of what this is. It's nothing critical. It's not super detailed. You don't have to describe anything about the timing of contrast or anything. The most important thing is this section and the following section. Ultimately, this will be displayed in a prettier way to clinicians, but basically what we're doing is we're telling them, what is this study good for? What kinds of indications might you get in the MRI for? And you can edit this whole section by going into this little edit button, which I'll show you in a moment because I did something silly there. And then there's the bad for section, which is what are the kinds of things that we see orders come in occasionally for that really are not relevant for this particular order. We want to be able to not only indicate what things they should not be ordering this for, but when we can suggest an alternative, which I will show you in a moment, which doesn't have anything right now. There's also a field for alternative imaging options. So let's say if this study were contraindicated, and you can see most of these have a little kind of instruction text with them. If this were contraindicated for some reason, what would be an alternative you could consider? So I'm just going to show you this right now. Oh, of course. All right, ignore that for now. That hopefully will be fixed by the time you do it. You basically do a search, much like you did at the beginning, to find a particular kind of study, and you select the studies that you would want to put there. This is a question that a lot of clinicians have asked us: when should I order this with contrast? And I think that here there's a little example I give here, but basically it's trying to help the clinician understand when is contrast useful, when is it not useful. Here, someone had already from a Google form put in, when there's a suspected soft tissue mass or infection, then you can get this with contrast, which would mean, of course, ordering a different study. But for other indications, contrast is generally not helpful. Sometimes you might put nothing in here, you might put never or always, depending on what the order is. Then we have search terms. So we want to make search much better for clinicians. When they use EPIC right now, there is an option to have synonyms, but they're quite limited. And here we want to be able to add things that a person might, let's say someone who's not that knowledgeable, a clinician, let's say an internal medicine doc who wants to do an EMRI and doesn't really know much about it, they might type in ACL tear. So they type in ACL, and hopefully these terms can be searched for in the same way that we searched for the term MRI knee. You could put in patella or any of these terms, and it will come up. And you can remove these if the ones that came in you don't feel are very good. Get rid of one, you can add it back in, and then these terms will be searchable. I do think that over time we should have terms in here that refer to some of these indications. So for instance, to say this Baker's as in Baker's cyst. That might be something that somebody looks up. And we want them to be able to find the right study that goes with that. So in general, we would put in the good indications if they're brief and can be said in a phrase or a sentence or a word or a two-word phrase. But if it's a longer explanation, then no, that we wouldn't do that. It's currently live. This one about recommended locations. That is intended for certain situations where you really need, let's say, a 3T MRI for this particular case, and those are only available at certain sites, or I don't even know if we have an open MRI anymore. The idea, or you have certain coils at certain locations, or whatever the restriction is, we want to give them some heads up about that if we can. And then this is any other useful information. Images. So what we're going to do in MSK is to have our fellows actually add images to these cases so people can see what this looks like. And just to show you real fast, what you do is you do a search just like you might do any other kind of thing. It will upload this. You can put Samuel, that's it. Save. And then you have this image and you have a little description. This will be available to clinicians. Eventually, we're also going to have the option to have some hyperlinks to video, audio-visual, like explanations or other things that, again, all these things can be developed and filled in over time. We don't have to be perfect right off the bat, but we want to start to at least nail down the text early on. Let me go to these indications, these important indications. Now, in these cases, you have to access this stuff. You go into this edit button, and then you kind of have a separate edit page for this. And you can choose to edit the text or remove these. So for instance, look at this. I added this ridiculous indication, like if there might be a meniscus tear. Okay, so I don't like that. So I want it just to be meniscus tear. So I can go in, edit it, and hit save. Now, not only will that be present here, but in the other studies that are linked to this. I do think that you should consider just doing relatively short phrases. Nothing, not too much prose is not that helpful. We want this to be information that clinicians can look down, bullet point, really fast, see, okay, this is good for these things, great. Then you can get out of this by going back on the details, and you can see that's been changed. Now for bad for, I just want to point out one more thing, and it is that you can edit the text of this part, like by going like this. So you can just click on stuff. And then an important thing is this alternative order section. Now, hopefully, unlike the previous, this will work a little bit better. So if we go here, and I go MRI upper leg is what I'm going for here, because this is a proximal quadriceps injury. And I can look here, MRI upper leg without contrast. That's what I want. So I would select this. Now, this order is linked to this indication. Similarly, here I'm going to try a different thing. I'll say CT knee for this indication. And you can add multiple. I don't know if right now it's working where you can select multiple at once, but it will eventually. Okay, so now these are added, and when I go back, what you can see is in the bad for section, these now have hyperlinks so that when the clinician goes to this, they can click on this and a little modal window will pop up and they can learn more about that order. Anyway, I think that basically gets the functionality. I don't want to get mired into too many details. Bottom line is you can use this to go through those cases that are drafts in particular for your section. Consider distributing it among your members of your group to make it more efficient. And you can work through these details. It's pretty functional now. It's pretty easy to use, but if you have any questions, let me know.